Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty. Hoy me tomo selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of your favorite sports crime podcast, Dangerous Games. I am Courtney. I am from Reckless Cards. I'm super excited to be here. And as always, I am joined by the enigmatic, beautiful, stunning, intelligent, perfect, gorgeous,
Perfect.
wonderful,
Might be wonderful, but I'm
the
not
original Mrs. Breaker, Sarah from
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Sports. How are you?
I am, I'm here. We are making it. We are
You
doing
have
it.
your first show this weekend.
Yes, we
And I
do.
don't know when this will drop, but
Yeah, I didn't know either, so I wasn't gonna say anything. But since you brought it up, yes, we are. We're actually hosting our first show in the 406, and we are excited. Should be a good turnout, and yeah,
well,
should be a good time.
we'll talk about it next week when we record and see how it went for you. So regardless, whenever this drops,
If
we'll
I'm
just
alive after this weekend, it went well.
we have a show this weekend too. Ours is in Chicago and I am not putting it on. I'm just going because I don't have the wherewithal at this moment in time to put on my own show. Although I would not rule that out as something I would definitely like to do.
It's definitely fun to a certain degree. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. A lot of
Yeah.
little pieces. But if you can be organized, it's not too bad. I just dropped the ball on a couple things, so it was just
You
more
can't
on
be
my plate.
perfect. I used to be an event planner, so
Mm,
I I've never put on a card show, but I put on a rodeo for 30,000 people once, and
you
that was
can put
pretty
on a card
crazy.
show then.
Yeah.
That's more, I think, complex than a card show.
Well, I mean, there's live animals that can maul people, so that was a little
That's no
scary.
big deal. I don't know what your problem is. These cards can jump through and eat people.
I know, right? Well, I mean, people do get tased at card shows all the time, so
Yes, because they're
so
stupid.
yeah. All right. So let's jump into our case today. This is more of a modern case. This is one where I know everyone is going to know this person, and it's a Sarah lead show today. So I'm very excited to just turn this over to her and let her tell the story.
Perfect. Thanks, girl. Well, this one is actually kind of a bittersweet one. There's a lot of controversy behind this person. And before we get into it, we're just kind of going to put it out there now that there's a million conspiracies against this individual and what happened to him. But at the end of the day, the person isn't here anymore. And I think that that's the biggest issue there. Um, so you all can have your own conspiracies. We're not going to feed too much into them. We're just going to be straight to the facts. There might be some hits here and there on conspiracy, but
Yeah, we could probably touch on a couple of like the main ones, but again,
yes,
it's a
whatever
conspiracy.
you believe is what you believe, and that's perfectly fine. We just want to spew some facts about
Yes,
this individual.
as much facts as we have.
Right, true, true. So this is an all-American, all-around American hero, and it is exactly who people call Pat Tillman. That is who he was and who he is. Patrick Daniel Tillman Jr. was born on November 6th, 1976, in Fremont, California, and he is the oldest of three sons to Mary and Patrick Tillman. Pat was a caring and protective brother and a natural leader with a tendency to push limits in life. But who doesn't do that? I mean, I do that. But not just in life, but also in the classroom and on the field. Pat was raised in a home where his father was a well known attorney and his mother a teacher. So he didn't come from a broken home like a lot of these other ones that we have talked about in the past weeks. He came from, I guess you could say, wealth if you wanted to, compared to others. But
Educated
yep,
and yeah, his parents were smart. A teacher and a lawyer, these are intelligent people.
correct. And it rubbed off on him, and I think that's awesome. I mean, that's a great opportunity. But Pat was your typical youngster, climbing trees and playing outside with his brothers, especially Kevin, who was only 2 years younger than him. The world was his playground, and Pat was ready to explore what it had to offer. Pat was very athletic, but most of us know him as the football player. But in fact, football was never his first sport. This caught me off guard.
That
Pat
is, he was so
actually,
good too, so that is shocking.
right? He's not big, so it kind of makes sense. Like maybe that's why. He's kind of on the smaller side compared to most.
It's so
But
funny too because the pictures you see of him, his jaw, he doesn't look small. He looks like
he looks meaty. That sounds really wrong.
thick.
Uh, Thick, handsome.
He's
I have a
he's a
big
good looking.
picture of him now in my
I
room.
know. I'm very excited. We'll be sharing that. We're gonna have to like put it. We have to put it up to against something for
A
context of how
ruler.
gigantic this thing is. It's not a sports card, guys. It's
No, it's a sports
our
wall.
first memorabilia for the Dangerous Games
Yeah, yeah,
collection.
my wall too.
Yeah.
But so actually, he was a catcher in baseball,
Oh,
and he only got into football after he was cut from the varsity team in his freshman year in high school. Is when he picked up football. So like
imagine
this
being the
is
coach that cut
crazy.
Pat Tillman.
I mean, maybe his crazy antics and his craziness was too much for them. Who knows? But this is when Pat would turn to football, and I think that's for an outlet. But by the time he was a senior, he was a star. Like, of course he is.
Isn't
I
that
mean, it's Pat.
crazy? Like he started late and he becomes a star.
It really did blow me away when I read that because I was like, I thought it was always like, he started when he was a peewee. Like that was kind of, and he made his way up. And I was like, to know that it was the opposite was just like, wow. You hear that a lot though. A lot of baseball players are also football players, and vice versa.
I mean,
So
both. Bono.
standing at 5'11", so he's not that tall,
Oh
and
no.
only weighing 195 pounds,
He's a little guy.
like he's tiny.
Well,
Pat
compared
had
to football players.
right. I mean, he's a running back, so they're usually thinner and like trimmed, I should say.
Yeah.
But still, 5'11" is pretty short for a running back. But Pat had scored 31 touchdowns at running back and had 110 tackles as a linebacker. He played both positions.
Wow.
There was to be so good at the sport and then be good at two positions is just crazy. There was one game that Pat was removed from the field for his attitude. See, this is where I think maybe he got kicked off the baseball team. Who knows? For his attitude, and Pat actually snuck back onto the field to return a kickoff for a touchdown, putting his high school ahead in the match. Pat excelled so much both in school and on the field that he was given a football scholarship to ASU, where he would later decide to make it his alma mater.
Aw.
Yep, Pat would secure the last scholarship spot for ASU as a linebacker in 1994. Linebacker was indeed his position, and he excelled at it at ASU, even though he was considerably smaller than most linebackers. Pat would help ASU go on to be undefeated during his junior season, and the Sun Devils would make an appearance at the Rose Bowl that year. In 1997, Pat was named Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year, and in that Arizona State MVP. Unlike other athletes, though, Pat completed his degree at ASU. A lot of them usually draft out before completing it. In only 3.5 years, he completed it too, which is crazy. This guy was just smart and just loved the books and knowledge that he was getting. And with a GPA of 3.85.
This kid. So he definitely takes after his parents. He's smart.
Correct.
He's a little wild. He has
Which is okay.
he's got a little wild streak in him, but he's smart, he's athletic, he's good looking. He's the whole package, huh?
I think so. And he's just, who wouldn't want to love Pat, And he majored in marketing, which was kind of interesting. A lot of people I don't really hear a lot of marketing people, coming into sports. Usually it's some type of sports related
Or
or
it's
general
business
degree.
or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Pat received more awards than some may ever see in their lifetime. After his victorious time at ASU, Pat entered the NFL draft in 1998. Pat would later be selected 226th pick by his state, Arizona Cardinals.
226. Damn, that is low. You think
So
it's
what
because
is
he was
that?
small?
I think so.
Well,
I
I
know
was just like,
32.
spoiler. I was just like reading about Aaron Hernandez, and he was fourth round, and he was like 113th pick. So 226. That's way
Seventh,
down.
seventh round maybe
Yeah,
towards the end, I would assume.
yeah.
Um, I wonder if he was 6 picks away from the end. I'm not really sure, but Pat would once again change positions while playing in the NFL to safety, and would go on to start in 10 of the 16 games his rookie season. Many people debuted his ability to deliver as a starter for the Cardinals, but Pat would destroy that skepticism by becoming the team's starting safety. They doubted he's ever going to be anything because he was so tiny. And as a safety to be 5'11, that is
That's pretty
pretty
short. You know,
small.
it's so funny is because like I'm like 5'4", so who am I to be like, oh,
I know
5'11"
I'm
is
5'3".
that's but for like I remember one of the first times I ever was at like Soldier Field, I was down on field level and the players were walking around, and I remember like because I'd always sat like up higher, being
Mhm.
down that close to like and up close to them, they seemed monstrously big.
Right?
Like it like to me like normal guys are 5'11", like that's a normal guy, and
Correct.
like
And
football players
195.
are yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like you know
You're taking on big linemen. Like to be a
I
safety,
feel like that's like a quarterback size. Like I could see a quarterback being a little guy like
I
that, or
feel like
like a
that's even
kicker.
small for a quarterback. Yeah, kicker. I'd go with a kicker. Um, but Pat never allowed his success to go to his head, which was kind of different because he had that kind of attitude once in a while, or break his true colors and morals. He would drive to home games in the same beat up truck he had in college. He had no cell phone. He would dive deep into topics and develop, debate, and discuss his ideas with eager listeners, family, and friends. He made sure that your passion or goals were his passion and goals.
Sounds like my
And
kind of person.
I would love to have met him.
Yeah.
In the off season and during the time he stated he was quote unquote bored, because that's the off season for him, he would run marathons in triathlons to help kill time. He even went back to ASU to get his master's degree in history. If that wasn't enough to keep one busy, Pat would also volunteer at multiple organizations in the Phoenix Valley. He even turned down a $9 million 5-year contract from the St. Louis Rams out of loyalty to his Cardinals.
Wow.
But but Pat felt there was even more to life that he needed to give and would do so by sacrificing it all. So, the USA had been attacked. Our soil was becoming saturated with our own Americans' blood. September 11th is a day we will all remember, a day that we as Americans were attacked on our own soil. The day after the attacks of September 11th, 2001, Pat told a reporter, "At times like this, you stop and think about just how good we have it, what kind of system we live in, and the freedoms we are allowed. A lot of my family has gone and fought in wars, and I really haven't done a damn thing." He would finish his career with the NFL in May of 2002 after the September 11th attacks. He would also go on to turn down a contract offer from the Cardinals in the sum of $3.6 million over 3 years. Pat Tillman would instead enlist in the U.S. Army. Before Pat enlisted, he married his high school love, Marie, but he didn't enlist alone. His younger brother, Kevin, would also join the same time Pat did. This decision shocked so many and caused a national media attention. But Pat didn't care to speak publicly about his choice. This was his choice and no one else. By late 2002, both brothers had completed basic training in Ranger assessment and selection program and were assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion out of Fort Lewis, Washington. Pat and Marie lived in University Place, located a little north of Tacoma in the Puget Sound area, before being deployed to Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom. After serving a tour in Iraq, Pat returned to the States and went to Ranger School in September of 2003 at Fort Benning, Georgia. He would later graduate from Ranger School in November, so only a couple months later. Shortly after completing Ranger School, Pat was deployed to the sandbox again, but this time to Afghanistan, and posted at FOB, and I think it's called Salerno. On the evening of April 22nd, 2004, Pat's unit was ambushed as it traveled through the rugged canyon terrain of eastern Afghanistan. His heroic efforts to provide cover for his fellow soldiers as they escaped from the canyon led to his ultimate death. Initially, reports had been that Pat was killed by enemy combats. 2 other members of his squad were injured, and an Afghan allied soldier had been killed in this ambush as well. Rumors began to spread that Pat had been killed by friendly fire, and that the military was trying to cover it up. It wasn't until after his burial that an investigation by the DoD and the U.S. Congress were launched to put merit to these rumors. Because at this point, you're just pointing fingers. We need some actual facts. Regardless of how Pat felt about the war, in the situation as a whole, did not lead to his death. Another rumor that had been started was that Pat's feelings about the war might have made him a target. It was later found to be, in fact, friendly fire that took Pat's life and the Allies' life. There are so many speculations as to why this encounter occurred, but the end result is the same. Pat is not here anymore. A man who signed up to fight for our country during a time of need is gone, like many others are. Pat could have stayed in football, and he may still be here today. The possibility is much greater that he would be, but he instead enlisted. For the Tillman family, all they wanted was answers as to why this mistake would happen, or why there was 2 groups of the same American soldiers entering that canyon right after each other, causing a gunfire between the 2 of them. To add more insult to injury, the Tillmans would later find out that the Army knew immediately that Pat had died by friendly fire. Now, this is not speculation. This is not a conspiracy. This is all proven facts. Pat had been shot 3 times in the head less than 10 yards away. The politics behind what happened to Pat is disgusting. To try and cover up this is just wrong. Members of Tillman's unit burned his body armor and uniform in an apparent attempt to hide the fact that he was killed by friendly fire. His notebook that Tillman wrote in daily was also burned, which is a violation of protocol for the Army. The Army would go as far as to ask Tillman's unit members to lie to the Tillman family at his service if they were asked questions about his death. The reason behind all these actions is honestly mute when it comes to the family that has been rattled by the conspiracies. What they know is that Pat, a true hero, a one-of-a-kind, a scholar, a brother, a son, a husband, an NFL player, was no longer here. Kevin, his brother, testified on behalf of his family during all these investigations. The deception surrounding this, the Tillman case, was an insult to the family, but more importantly, its primary purpose was to deceive a whole nation. We say these things with a disappointment and sadness for our country. After Kevin's testimony, Pete Gurney, acting secretary of the Army, stated to reporters, "We as an Army failed in our duty to the Tillman family, the duty we owe to all families of our fallen soldiers. give them the truth the best way we know it as fast as we can. After having some answers to their questions, Pat Tillman's family and his now widow established the Pat Tillman Foundation to carry forward Tillman's legacy by inspiring and supporting those striving for positive change in themselves and the world. Pat made sure everyone knew how much his family and friends meant to him, and his legacy lives on through that foundation. Later on, the Arizona Cardinals would go on to retire his jersey. ASU retired his jersey. In 2004, the NFL donated $250,000 to the USO Center in memory of Tillman, and since then, the NFL continues to support the USO. The Pac 10 Conference renamed its annual Defensive Player of the Year award in football to the Pat Tillman Defensive Player of the Year. I thought this was kind of cool. The bridge over the Colorado River by the Hoover Dam is named after Tillman.
I just drove over that, and it is. So
I think that's the coolest thing ever. Really, like it. I think we did too. No, we didn't go over the Hoover Dam. That's right. But I have been, not recently. The Arizona State University Sun Devils football team wore special uniforms made by Adidas to honor Tillman in his career on October 29th, 2015, when they faced my Oregon Ducks. All proceeds from the uniforms went to the Pat Tillman Foundation. I tried to order one and there's none. I'm not that crazy. I'm crazy, but I ain't that crazy. Go after something.
Well, we'll link the foundation in the show notes, so if anyone wants to donate, you absolutely can too.
Yes, and last little piece, a little information that I found was Jake Plummer. Everybody knows who Jake Plummer is. During the 2004 NFL season, asked to keep his decal that they had all been put on in honor of Tillman on his helmet for the remainder of this season. But this kind of irked me, and it kind of put a sour note on the NFL. But the NFL declined that request because it would not be uniform with the rest of the Denver Broncos. So,
Unbelievable.
Plummer later grew a full beard and his hair long in honor of Tillman, who had such a style in NFL before cutting his hair for the military. And I don't, with this whole situation, it hits pretty. I mean, I won't get into conspiracies. I already said that, but like it's just the facts and just reading the facts and researching this and just getting to know the facts. You sit there and go, wow, we really did do them dirty, that family.
Well, you think about it, the Army covering it up from the jump is why there's conspiracies. Yeah. And now it's like, no matter what they say, if they're like, we did the investigation and this is the truth, people are like, is it though? Because you said that was the truth the last time. Yep. So the Army itself and its behavior in this, and all the people in his platoon that like burned his clothes and his stuff, like they are.
The notebook could have easily been something that maybe his wife could be holding on to, that his wife could read, like anything, like just to do something like that in general is just inhumane. Oh, yeah. Bottom line.
And the fact that they would, I don't know. I'm like, you hear all the time that we were just following, orders. But at some point, like, you're culpable when you follow orders that are wrong.
I know.
I don't know. It's so funny.
I don't know.
It's not funny. I remember, obviously, when 9/11 happened, I was in high school. So I remember where I was. I remember what I was doing.
I do too.
And when the news broke that Pat Tillman was going, I remember everyone being like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. Like, I remember everyone who was a couple of years older than me, like, oh, if he's going, the draft is like, we're going to get drafted.
On the way. Yeah.
I remember that everyone being scared of that. And then when he died, it was very much like when Kobe Bryant died, because it was so shocking. Everybody, like my generation, when I was a teenager, we were still so shook over what happened with 9/11, and then you have him getting him deciding to enlist, and everyone, all the fear mongering of like, this is going to be a huge war and everybody's going to get drafted. And then him dying. I remember, and then all the conspiracies, all the what happened. And then when it came
Wise.
out what really happened, how horrifying that all seemed to me. And I was, I don't know, between the ages of 16 and 18 when all of this was going on.
You know what I found out was really weird and kind of cool, I guess. One of our old family friends actually was his ranger officer
Oh,
in
wow.
in school, and actually he, our friend, our family friend, had passed away in a military operation training. His helicopter came down, and
Oh,
so
man.
Um, but it was just kind of interesting to kind of see how it all connects. How something so like somebody so big, Pat Tillman, is connected to like so much, and he did so much when he was here. He provided more than a lot of people did, and still do today. I mean, he was just an all around American hero. He really was, and not in the sense of like people say hero because he came in and when the house was burning down and he's a hero, like he who he is in his core.
Yeah, the life he chose to live.
Correct. And he lived a full life, and as short as it was, I mean, he was only like what, I think he was only like 20 something. I mean, he was really young, and it's just like I look at it and it's like I'm older than him, and it's like I live past that, and he did so much. He's done so much more than I've ever done, I'm ever gonna do.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
it's hard.
That was such a sad ending to like a really just, it was a scary time in American history.
Yeah,
I don't know, like I think our age demographic on here is like 35 to like 55. So
they
the
should know.
majority of the people that we're talking to right now like remember what that was like, and I remember it. And so for him to give up something, in our
It was so
generation, it was very
sad.
much like
Yep.
MTV and
Yep. Oh
like
yeah,
very
thank you.
hedonistic, and
Yep.
he was a very selfless person for that. I remember thinking like
Very simple.
I don't know a lot of people that would do something like that given his, level of privilege. And he grew up very privileged. So
Very.
for
And
him
then
to be so selfless as a person,
he had a full ride to ASU. I mean,
yeah,
he had an offer from two different, to stay with the Cardinals or to go to the Rams with more money.
yeah,
And he's like, no, I want to defend the soil that I'm raised on.
yeah,
And it's like
loyal person.
very,
Yeah.
very,
That is a very sad story. And that was one I'm pretty familiar with. A couple of the ones you've done, I like had never heard of. This one, every time I think of Pat Tillman, it makes me feel sad. It was a sad story.
very.
And he was a hero, and I'm sorry that his family had to go through all that drama with the lies and the cover up,
Just
and
for answers. I mean, good grief.
and then all the crazy conspiracy people just like
Adding to
dividing
it.
them, yeah, all the
Yep.
time. So that's
Yep.
terrible. Well, with that, everyone, thank you for joining us
Yes,
for this
thank you.
episode of Dangerous Games. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow so that you get notified when we have more episodes up. We really appreciate you. And if you're listening on, one of the podcast platforms, if you want to just give us a little 5-star rating, that would be super cool of you. It helps with the algorithm and keeps everything flowing. So
Yes,
we thank
please.
you, and we will see you, or you'll hear us next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty, hoy me tomo un selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.